director of the school was not an occupational therapist or knew very little about occupational therapy, but became the director of the school because she was perhaps a good administrator or
maybe that's what she
popular. And to think of finding directors for all of these schools who really have any ability to teach or any ability to bring out the variations and help the student to find the way through the sort of maze of activities and how to treat patients and so forth that has them bewildered more than anything else.
Do you have any feeling we should think about fewer schools, better staff?
I should think it might be, well, a very appropriate thing to start inspection of the schools. I don't know whether any of that has been done, but if schools are started, I think that they should be carefully inspected to ascertain as fully as possible how adequate the training that they're giving is. I can't see it as being
they do it every 5 years,
pretty inadequate. Do they?
Yeah, but it seems to me you're saying more than just looking at whether the curriculum content is right.
The curriculum content doesn't count nearly as much as the application that is being taught, the further training and experience in the tools that they're using. And the college graduate is throwing out the tools. So I think I don't want to be too repetition, but I've said it already, she's out of a job one of these days.
The other factor in your education is the quality of your clinical practice, and that is getting very broadly spread, as broadly as some people's concept of occupational therapy. And therefore some students receive the minimum of experience. For instance, I cannot really feel that a clinical experience in the AOTA is going to greatly improve students' ability to treat patients. I think it will greatly increase her interest in the association, and she may become the executive director, but that isn't the purpose.
Would you see that level thing more as a advanced level kind of thing?
Yes, or I think that we should shift into the certificate, into a master's degree level.
This was going to be my next question.
That is my answer. You have your COTA on the BS or BA level, and shift the master's degree level, and then require a period in there of good experience. And somebody better define good, not me, before going on to completing a PhD.
Would you think of it also in terms of limited specialty initially? As, for instance, coming out as a certificate person qualified to do only certain things?
I don't think you can have... It's very difficult to decide this specialty problem. I think that you've got to have a generalized broad core, because if I'm a specialist in psychiatry and I have a patient who has a stroke, I'd better know how to treat him, or we're going to have to call in Miss Smith to take care of him, and that's 2 therapists, and Miss Smith won't be probably trained in a psychiatric hospital to handle a stroke case. So this is your situation. I think you need a broad core, and then I think you need to progress towards specialization, yes. And I think one specialization could be the directorship of a school, with experience in schools and with students and with guidance and counseling and so forth. Now, you're going to have to find somebody else to teach some of your courses. You might have a COTA in teaching you some of your skills. Some of the schools do.
Yes, they already are doing that, I think, to quite an extent, and the COTAs are being trained more and more in craftsmanship, in really the use of crafts, and therefore are learning more and more of the direct application for the treatment to be based on different approaches and different aspects that give the COTA the knowledge of how to go on with the patient. I think that she is going to get the major part of training eventually just by experience. And I still can't picture with the large number of schools and the demand for directors and that sort of thing, I just don't see where the personnel is going to come from.
Unless you bring in part-time instructors from the clinical field,
Yes.
as
You do
many of the
something of
schools
that
have
sort,
done,
yes.
and then bring somebody in from psychiatry who is working in the field of psychiatry and teaches just a psychiatric course.
Yes.
But then they ought to be supervising the psychiatric clinical clerkships and
At the
clinical
same time.
experience, and then she hasn't time to do the other.
Yes.
So it's a vicious circle.
But you're bringing in the director of the school who may be very good in one particular phase of occupational therapy and may be able to teach or give sufficient to the students in that way, but who falls short in another area. That is the psychiatry. It will be definitely one area. Well, is the director of the school to be an occupational therapist who has done a great deal with psychiatry, or is it to be broader than that? And what's she going to do with dealing with the treatment of physical disabilities and so on? The parts of occupational therapy are so evident and so rounded and understood in their individuality, but it's very difficult for one person to be really a specialist in more than one of the different phases. So somewhere you're going to have a lap, and is it that to be balanced in some way, or I don't know.
Well, there's one thing. We have survived a number of years. It will be 50, now 60.
60.
And this, I would say, more or less we come to the conclusion that we might manage to last another 20. And maybe by that time, somebody wiser than us will have solved some of these
Perhaps so,
problems.
yes. That may well be.
In your careers, though, and let's hope that happens. I don't mean just to move on. Let's hope that there are some solutions to some of the problems that have been with us for a while. But
Well, there won't be.
in your careers, has there ever been a point when you said, I really question what I've been doing, or I really shouldn't have gone into OT, I should have done something else? No.
No,
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever felt that way, but of course, as I said, I've been in the administrative end of it more than anything else, so that it wasn't a serious matter, provided I could get somebody good to teach what I had no ability whatsoever to teach. Didn't bother me. It was just a normal thing. I couldn't always have instructors in every field, but I could get a good balance of them. And by using the centers and so forth, I could make up for my own deficiencies and hopefully keep them from becoming too glaring.
Your answer intrigues me because I've always kind of believed in modeling, or what I'd call modeling, that a younger therapist tends to learn from
Yes.
having seen somebody else. And my own closeness to you has meant that always you modeled for me, and therefore I never felt the time when I wanted out. But it seems to me that if a young therapist falls with others who do question, then they in turn question, or frustrated, or
Just
want to
let
get
that ring,
out.
don't pay any attention to it.
I think that's the hope for the girl who comes out of perhaps a weak curriculum, if she does come with a
Yes.
good clinical person.
Well, I would
Should be
really
a-
be very interested to know how much study has been given to the schools that have been so quickly founded, the broad proliferation of all of these schools, so that there's so many of them to be taken care of now, and how much inspection or evaluation is being done as to what those schools are teaching and how they're teaching it and how good their students are at the present time.
Well, aren't they inspected every 5 years?
But it seems to me she's even saying more in terms of what's the product of the graduates.
Yes.
Yes.
It's the product. Well, yes, I can remember an inspection in which the inspector was not a group of OTs, incidentally, came and looked in each file drawer to be sure we had files. and then sat down and discussed.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I don't really know what we discussed, but it wasn't OT,
Yeah.
or at least it wasn't the school. And so many students that get into OT have said that they don't know what their role is. And I think that this is something I always want to say, why don't you get out there?
Yes. Why don't they establish their role and find out what they really are? But
I know that-
confess that my viewpoint, I think, is less and less valuable, because when I was preparing to retire, I thought that I would find it impossible to do anything that would take the place of the relationship that I had with occupational therapy. And I came back after we went abroad. I had actually retired and we went abroad. I came back and I couldn't care less. So that I somehow saved myself any feeling of regret or any feeling that I wanted to fight against what was happening, that I just wasn't going to grow older, that I just wasn't going to give up. I still was going to go on, and I just washed it all out. And with the result that I'm sure many of my opinions may be absolutely worthless.
10 years out of date.
Yes, 10 years out of date. And I feel that very definitely, because I don't sit down and read a job from cover to cover. I look at it, and if some of the gobbledygook and the research papers and so forth are in it, I just say, well, I just don't have to bother with that. I just let it go by.
Perhaps
So that I can lack completely any true picture or any true vision that I can have of occupational therapy at the present time.
except for the fact that personally you have inculcated occupational therapy so tremendously in your own personality and in your own system that you have occupational therapy yourself very well.
What she did was she fell in love with archaeology.
Yes.
Oh,
You
how
see, I
nice.
came
Is that
back
right?
and
I wondered.
I didn't really know what to do with myself, and I decided that I'd take a course in archaeology at the University of Pennsylvania. And of
She
course, it was
started with
really
ancient
very
history.
tempting, because they would send, when you applied to take a course, they would send you back a nice little card saying that you were permitted to take this course and this course and this course. And that since I was graduated, since I was an ex-professor, which slew the university, they didn't know what to do with me. They'd never had one before, apparently. And what were they to do with me? Well, I said that they could let me take some courses. And so they did that, and then they decided that I wouldn't have to pay for those courses. So I wound up by paying $1.50 health fee to the university to take 2 or 3 courses, whatever I wanted to. And the result was that I had myself a ball. I went in and studied archaeology. I didn't have to pass examinations. I didn't have to do anything responsible in connection with it. I could have as much fun as I wanted. And I had a lot of fun, so that I didn't care what happened. It was a beautiful bridge over.
Yes.
And while I'm still interested, as you, I think, think I am, nonetheless, I've just shrugged off any responsibility with it, and so I look at things, and maybe possibly quite wrongly, I say, well, I don't think you should be doing that, or something of the sort, or what are they doing if they're going to do a thing of that sort in OT?
But I think that's one of the reasons we wanted to talk to you, because I think there's such a thing as being so close one doesn't always
Yes.
see, and at a different kind of distance, I think you give us questions to think about too, that kind of frame in ideas for us. Do you suppose that the emergence of so many schools professionally came also because there were so many of the COTA courses, and that people rushed then to provide supervisors for them?
I think that may possibly have had something to do with it, because when I just the other day, I read the list or saw the list of the schools that are operating at the present time, and was appalled to discover how many there actually were, up in the 50s. And my immediate reaction from that was, well, who in the world is in there managing those courses but some youngster who's relatively just out of school?
But you must remember there's a population explosion, and this has happened around the world. We have an expansion of schools in every country.
Yes.
And some of them are very interesting. I can't remember whether it was Nigeria or Sudan or Kenya that wanted to start one with admission requirements of 4th grade because that was what the only thing that their people had, yet they were excellent manual workers, excellent supervisors, and so on. And I think this is true throughout the world.
In a very short space of time that we have left, is there anything that you would like to say to our new graduates about what you would think their goals should be in occupational therapy as related to patient treatment care?
Well, personally, I don't have any contact with them now, and I would be embarrassed to get up and talk to a group of students about anything more than just what occupational therapy was when I was young. And I don't know that I could
give them any advice at all?
I'm not sure that I could. I'm not sure that I would feel that I had a right to give it, because I would feel that I didn't have enough real appreciation of their particular situation and wherein they were having difficulties or anything of that sort. There might be something practical enough so that I could say, well, in my opinion, I'd do this instead of that. But I wouldn't feel now that I was qualified. If I had kept up with every bit of literature and all of changes and so forth, so that I felt I still had a detailed knowledge of what had gone on with the AOTA and the whole development throughout the country, that would be a different thing to consider. But now I would think that the only way that I could meet them and give anything to them would be to let them see me and say, well, she's 80, but she's still kicking.
And still very much interested in occupational therapy.
Interested in occupational therapy and interested in seeing them. That is, every student that I might see, I would look at and think, well, I wonder if you really are good for OT or whether you're not. So that I could look at them with a different viewpoint, but I don't want them to look with the other viewpoint and question my knowledge, my real knowledge, because I have none at the present time that I could say was exact and up to date and so forth.
Ms. Bagley?
The thing that I would emphasize is that going on for further education and basic research is vitally important, but the one thing they mustn't forget is that their patients are human, and tender, loving care is more important than anything else. And most patients need it very badly. And that you also need the knowledge that you might get in basic research, but many of our patients do need the tender, loving care and the time spent on them, and can achieve more by it, because they will be willing to work because they like you. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. The occupational therapist's duty is to lead the horse to water and to make him thirsty.
That's a perfect way to close this segment, and I do thank you very much for allowing us into your home. We came to you with a quest for your rememberings of the past of occupational therapy, and you've been very gracious about telling us about it. Thank you very much.
We've had more fun than you can imagine.
It's been very
We've
nice.
enjoyed every minute of it.
It has been very
Really
nice.
Surely
Very,
have.
very.
It even makes me
meaningful.
feel so guilty that I probably will go back and proceed to read all of it.
Slowly. Excuse my French.
No, I think your response to that was perfect, really, because
It should be that.
yes.
Well, hopefully I wouldn't go on clinging to something that I had left and perforce go on with.
You've